Hey, every time you take a fucking breath, you owe me, Thomas.
Really?
Every time you take a fucking breath, you owe me! That thing I spared you from, I can give it back anytime I want. Yours is a business that needs money to grow. My money is clean! And the deal is fair for both of us. I don't understand how you're not more proud of him. You thought it was luck, no? But now you know it's not luck. It's a blind spot in the industry, and you're angry that he found it.
There is a moment in every war when the man who started it looks around at the wreckage and asks himself whether the thing he was fighting for was ever worth the price. Tommy Norris had not reached that moment yet, but it was coming. It was always coming, because West Texas does not let a man build an empire without eventually sending the bill, and the bill for CTT oil was not going to come in numbers on a page. It was going to come in blood. In fire, in the faces of the people Tommy loved most, cracked open by a world that had decided he needed to be taught a lesson he hadn't asked for. CTT had survived sabotage. It had survived the cartel. It had survived Cammy Miller and her fixers, and her falsified reports, and her glass office full of cold calculation. But Season 3 was not going to be about surviving. Season 3 was going to be about what happens when the walls close in from every direction at once, when the enemy is no longer just outside the gate, but already inside the house, when the man who built everything out of grit and desperation and love starts to wonder if the love itself has become the weapon being used against him. This is not a story about oil. It never was. This is a story about what a man is willing to burn to protect what he built, and whether, when the smoke clears, there is anything left of him worth saving. CTT is still standing, but standing is not winning, and in West Texas, there is no such thing as a permanent victory. There is only the next fight, and the next one after that, and the one that finally breaks you. Season 3 begins with Tommy Norris standing on ground he earned in blood, looking out at a horizon that is already on fire, and it does not let up. Not once, not for a single breath. The West Texas sky at the start of Season 3 is the color of a bruise, not the fresh kind, the deep settled kind that has had days to darken into something ugly and permanent. Tommy Norris stands at the edge of the CTT operation, with the wind pulling at his jacket and the smell of crude oil thick in the air, and he looks like a man who has not slept in weeks, because he hasn't. Sleep requires a kind of peace that Tommy Norris no longer has access to. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees Cooper beaten and bloody on the side of a road. He sees the pump station burning. He sees Galino's smile, that patient, terrible smile, the smile of a man who knows he has time because he owns it. And he sees the traitor, the one who was inside CTT, the one who fed their schedules and their plans and their vulnerabilities to the people trying to destroy them. That wound has not healed. It has not even scabbed over. It sits open and raw in the middle of everything Tommy is trying to build. And it poisons the air the way a bad well poisons the ground. Invisible at first, then everywhere, then impossible to fix. The question of who leaked is not resolved when Season 3 opens. TL found the leak. TL always finds the thing nobody wants to find. But knowing a leak exists and knowing who is behind it are two different kinds of knowing. And in the weeks between seasons, the suspicion has spread through the CTT camp like oil through cracked soil. Everyone is looking sideways. Everyone is a little quieter than they used to be. The roughnecks who used to joke over coffee are not joking anymore. The foremen who used to argue loudly and freely about drill plans are now careful with their words, careful with their eyes, careful in the specific way people get careful when they know something is watching them and they don't know what shape it's wearing. Tommy feels it every day. He built CTT on loyalty. He built it on the idea that the people around him were different from the corporate machinery that had chewed him up and spit him out. And now that idea is cracked, and he doesn't know how to fix a crack he can't even fully see yet. Cooper is different after the beating. That is the thing nobody in the Norris family wants to say out loud. But it is true, and it is sitting in the middle of every conversation they try to have. He is still fierce. He is still hungry. Cooper Norris does not know how to be anything but forward-moving. It is the thing Tommy loves most about him, and the thing that scares him most. But there is something else in Cooper now. A hardness that wasn't there before. A cold edge under the fire. The boy who laughed on the drill site when the first oil flowed. That clean, real laugh that cut through the diesel haze like something fresh and alive. That boy is still there. but he is further back now, behind something. And what is in front of him is a version of Cooper that has learned exactly what kind of world he is living in and has decided to meet it on its own terms. Tommy watches this and does not know whether to be proud or terrified. He decides he does not have the luxury of either. Rebecca is the one nobody anticipated. Angela had begged her to stay back. Angela had seen this movie before. She had lived inside it. She knew exactly how the third act went, and she did not want her daughter anywhere near the blast radius. But Rebecca Norris has her father's fire and her mother's intelligence, and that combination turns out to be more dangerous than either of her parents fully understood. She does not wait to be told what to do. She does not ask permission. She moves. In Season 3, Rebecca begins pulling threads that nobody asked her to pull. She has the photographs from Cammy Miller's office. She knows what is in them. She also knows that Tommy's plan to use that information himself, to weaponize it quietly, the way West Texas people weaponize things, is slow and uncertain and dependent on variables she does not trust. So she starts building her own play, quietly, without telling anyone, the way her father would have done it, the way her father always did it. And Angela, watching her daughter disappear into the same focused, dangerous silence that Tommy used to disappear into before everything went sideways, feels a cold that has nothing to do with the weather. Galino does not announce himself in Season 3. He never announces himself. He simply begins to tighten the envelope of cartel money that Tommy took after driving that unmarked rig through the dark is not forgotten. It is never forgotten. In Galino's world, a favor done is a leash attached, and now the leash begins to pull. Not violently, not yet. Galino is too smart for violence when patients will do the same job with less mess. Instead, his people start showing up at CTT sites, not to threaten, not to break things, just to be there, to stand at the edge of the operation, with their hands loose at their sides and their eyes steady, and their presence communicating everything that needs communicating without a single word being spoken. Tommy sees them, and he knows what they mean, and he says nothing to Cooper because Cooper would go straight at them, and that would be the end of Cooper. He says nothing to TL because TL would look at him with those ancient eyes and say, "I told you so," and the weight of that truth would be more than Tommy could carry right now. So he carries it alone, the way he carries everything he cannot fix, quietly in the dark, where nobody can see it eating him. Cammy Miller in Season 3 is no longer playing defense. She has a new partner. The Eastern money that Dale whispered about at the abandoned rig site under a sky the color of old blood. It is not vague anymore. It has a name, and the name is Harlan Cross, a man who made his fortune turning struggling oil operations into leverage, and leverage into control, and control into the kind of quiet empire that never appears in headlines, because it doesn't need to. Harlan Cross does not come to West Texas with wire cutters and fire crews. He comes with lawyers and shell companies and a patience so absolute it makes Galino look impulsive. He wants the CTT lease, not because he needs the oil, because the lease sits on the biggest untapped play in years. Dale said so, and Dale was right. And men like Harlan Cross cannot abide the idea of something valuable being held by someone who doesn't understand how to be properly afraid of them. He and Cammy together are a different kind of threat than anything Tommy has faced before, because they do not want to destroy CTT, they want to own it. And owning it means first making Tommy understand that he has no other options, that the ground beneath CTT is not as solid as it looks, that every foundation Tommy has built his dream on has a crack in it, and they are going to find every single one. The first move comes through the courts. Just as Dale warned, judges who have been quietly acquired, legal challenges to the lease that should be clean-cut but suddenly aren't, papers filed with the precision of people who know exactly where the soft spots are. Tommy sits across from his lawyer in a trailer that smells like coffee and diesel and hears words like injunction and disputed title and pending review and feels something in his chest go tight in a way that is different from the tightness of fear or the tightness of grief. It is the tightness of a man watching something he built with his hands being dismantled on paper by people who never once got their hands dirty. He walks out of that meeting into the flat white glare of the West Texas afternoon and stands there for a long moment, just breathing, just holding himself together long enough to figure out his next move. Because Tommy Norris does not collapse in the open. He collapses in private if he collapses at all. And then he gets back up, and he gets back to work. That is the only thing he has ever known how to do. That is the only answer he has ever had to questions that have no good answers. You get up, you get back to work, you bleed if you have to, and you do not stop. Not until the desert takes you, and it has not taken him yet. Dale Bradley does not scare easy. That is a fact about Dale that everyone who has ever known him understands without needing to be told. Dale has been on rigs that caught fire and stayed calm. He has been in rooms with men who wanted to hurt him and stared them down flat. He has seen the oil patch at its worst, and its most corrupted, and its most dangerous, and he has never once in Tommy's memory flinched from what was in front of him. So when Dale shows up at the CTT trailer in Season 3, with something in his eyes that Tommy does not immediately recognize, it takes Tommy a full 10 seconds to name it. And when he names it, his stomach drops. Because what is in Dale's eyes is not anger, not worry, not even fear in the regular sense. What is in Dale's eyes is the particular, specific expression of a man who knows something that he wishes he did not know. Something that is going to change things. Something that cannot be unsaid once it is said. He sits down across from Tommy, and he puts his hands flat on the table, and he says, quiet and direct, the way Dale always is. The way that makes every word land with full weight, that the traitor inside CTT is not who Tommy thinks it is. That the information was not leaked by a roughneck or a foreman or someone on the outside edge of the operation. It was leaked by someone closer, someone Tommy trusted in a way he does not trust most people. And then he says the name, and the room goes so quiet you could hear the desert breathing. Tommy does not react the way most men would react. He does not slam the table, he does not shout. He sits very still in the way he sits when something hits him hard enough to require all of his attention just to stay level. His jaw tightens. The muscle in his cheek does the thing it does. And then he breathes out once, slow and measured, and asks Dale if he is certain. Dale says he is. Tommy nods. He stands up. He walks to the window and looks out at the CTT operation, at the rigs, and the crew, and the ground that bled black gold for him when everything said it wouldn't. And he is very quiet for a very long time. And whatever happens in that silence, whatever calculation, or grief, or controlled fury moves through Tommy Norris in those seconds, he keeps it entirely to himself. When he turns around, his face is set. The decision is already made. And it is going to cost him, because it always costs him. That is the specific and unrelenting mathematics of Tommy Norris's life. Every answer costs something. Every solution has a price. And the prices keep getting higher. Cooper finds out differently. Cooper finds out the way young men find things out when they are paying attention, and nobody gives them enough credit for it. He has been watching. He has been watching since the beating, with that new cold thing behind his eyes, with the particular alertness of someone who has learned that the danger is not always visible until it is already on top of you. He puts pieces together that other people didn't think to connect, a timeline that doesn't quite add up, a conversation overheard that was never meant for his ears, a look exchanged that lasted half a second too long. And Cooper, who has his father's instincts even if he hasn't always had his father's patience, follows the thread until it leads him somewhere that stops him cold. He sits with it for a day, just a day, because Cooper Norris does not sit with things long. He goes to Tommy. And the conversation between them in that scene is one of the most quietly devastating things the show has ever done, because it is not loud, it is not explosive. It is two men who love each other, a father and a son, sitting across from the same unbearable truth, and trying to figure out how to hold it without letting it break something between them that can't be repaired. Angela wants out. She has wanted out since the pump station burned. She has wanted out since Galino's men showed up in the yard and put a fist through a window. She has wanted out since her daughter started disappearing into the same focused silence that Tommy disappears into. Since she recognized the fire in Rebecca's eyes as the same fire that has spent 20 years burning through everything in Tommy's path, including the parts of their life together that were worth saving. But Angela is not a woman who leaves easily. That is her particular burden and her particular strength. She does not run from hard things. She stands in front of them and she says her piece, and she asks for what she needs, and she waits to see if the person she loves can give it to her. She goes to Tommy in season 3, and she asks him something she has never asked him directly before. She asks him to choose, not between CTT and the family, not in the simple, clean way that question usually gets asked. She asks him to choose what kind of man he wants to be when this is over. Because she has watched him make compromises, she knows he cannot come back from clean. She has watched him take Galino's money and drive Galino's cargo through the dark and tell himself the lines were blurring when what was actually happening was the lines were disappearing. And she loves him enough to say it to his face. She loves him enough to make him look at it. And Tommy, who can stare down cartel enforcers and corporate lawyers and the full hostile weight of the West Texas desert without blinking, has to look away from Angela's eyes because she is the only person in his world who has never lied to him about what he is. And right now, what she is showing him is not easy to look at. Rebecca's play comes apart and comes together at the same time, in the way that only happens when someone is moving fast without any